Alright, so we took the motor back out of my truck, threw it in here. Took us probably about 3 hours or so to do. There was just two guys, me and another guy doing it. I took off the exhaust pipes on here because they were cracked, so I'm going to go ahead and put the ones from my newer engine on it. I just got to go pick up a gasket for it. As far as back along where it meets up with the transmission, I suck two bolts in. Where it connects up with the transmission, I put two of the bolts in, two of the heavier duty ones, and then we tried to put the engine mounts back in, but apparently the engine mounts are a different size on the motor that they gave us. So I had to switch the mounts on the motor with the mounts off of my old motor to hook up with the engine mount in my Jeep. So I did a little bit of switching around here and there. I did end up taking both of the mounts off actually to be able to get the first part in. And everything else, that's about it. One thing I did notice though is that I'm going to have to remove this pump as well. Looks like it's for like the radiator and stuff, because the fan and everything on this motor is in different places than on the other one. But it should be pretty simple to swap out. Everything else from here on out looks like it's just kind of plug and play, and hopefully it all works. Okay, so back on working the engine again. Basically all the brackets that were on my old engine need to be switched over to this one. Apparently they changed, even though the block is still the same on the 92, the brackets all changed between the 92 and the 95. And luckily all the bolts are still in the same spot though, so I'm moving over this bracket. The other one, I got to take off the water pump and put on the other one from the other motor. I got all the bolts back around the bell housing. That was a pain, especially the one on the bottom, the left side, where there's like some kind of cable going through there. It's almost impossible to get that bracket off. What else? I think everything else is about the same. Once I get these brackets on and get my old exhaust and air intake manifold back on, I'm replacing this gasket here. I'll also be replacing the gasket underneath the water pump. Everything else should be the same though once I get those things on, and then it's just all plug and play from there. To take off the water pump on a Jeep Cherokee motor, it's underneath this pulley right here, so you can see the top of the engine kind of lines up. Take off these bolts right here to get off the pulley itself, and then here's a motor I've already taken out. Once the pulley comes off, you've got 4 bolts holding it in, 2, 3, 4, and it just pops right off. Usually there is a gasket that covers the inside of this. You can just get that. I think it's like $3 at any part store. So put the gasket on and then just go ahead and reseal the water pump back down on top of that. It's a quick little update. We got the start in. I haven't gotten it wired up yet. Pretty straightforward. The longer bolt goes in bottom. The top bolt is the shorter one. After that, we got the manifold in. Getting that in was pretty simple as well. Just make sure you have a new gasket. My old one was pretty shot. Scraped it out really well, getting the old gasket all off of it. After that, just kind of screwed it on. There's 4 bolts up at the top, and then the bottom bolts, I believe there's 3 of them going along the bottom. Then it's just plug and play in. So you got those 4 right here, and this one, just kind of, remembering where you put them the first time around. I disconnected my the gas, where the gas goes in for the injectors. I disconnected it because I didn't want to work with this connection right here. I don't want to make it so I had to redo that whole cable. So I just reconnected that. It's all pretty straightforward. I think that's it right now. I'm going to make sure that these bolts are all the way on for the engine mounts, and then I'm got to do the front half of the engine. Okay, so this time around I got the power steering fluid pump. I just got all the bolts in place. They're still pretty loose, so I can adjust it back and forth when I do the serpentine belt. I also, when the old engine blew, when it threw her on. A bunch of oil came up through the air filter. So I went in and I cleaned all that out, most of it anyway. It's really hard to get oil and stuff out of the filter that's been sitting there for 2 years. Anyway, everything else should be pretty good. So quick update, I got the alternator on. Be careful with the bolts in the back. Don't tighten them down super tight. Those bolts do come loose. The little connectors can't take a whole lot of torque. Got that on yesterday. Down there on the starter, I got that all wired up. Got all the spark plugs tightened in and the distributor cap, the cables tightened onto them. Just clicked them in. That's it for now. There we go. It's cranked up and ready to roll. So finally got everything back in place. Just going to talk about a few things. Everything pretty much went back in the same way that it came out once I got the brackets all back in place. The AC compressor, obviously I haven't recharged this yet, so the AC is not going to work. The fans and everything will be fine. With the radiator fluid, it helps if instead of just filling the coolant, the overflow and inside the radiator, if you fill up a little bit inside the engine as well. So like once you get that bottom hose on, just pour some radiator fluid down in through the top, just so it doesn't have like air pockets and stuff inside. Mine's just been slowly cycling through, so I have to fill that up, let it seep in, fill it up, let it seep in. So there's multiple ways of doing that. The two big things as well is that the whole engine needs to be grounded. So there's a ground wire that you got to attach. Then there's also on the wiring connections, there's a few places where you can attach a ground wire. I just attached mine to the body of the Jeep, and that was sufficient ground for the whole thing to work. So like when I went to go start it the very first time, the starter wouldn't go because it wasn't grounded. I was pretty excited that it was only a simple solution like that to get the whole thing running. Then the last thing that gave me some issues was the fan. So down inside of there, you can kind of see there's 4 bolts that hold on that fan connector. The bolts that come out of that are double-sided. So there's one that screws into the engine itself, like the little pulley thing, and then the other one that the nut attaches to hold everything together. So I didn't have it attached tight enough the first time around, and so the fan wiggled itself off and destroyed my serpentine belt. Luckily, the serpentine belt's only like $25, so it was pretty easy to replace. Just something that can be avoided. Other than that, I had to refill the steering fluid. A little bit of that came out, and then just make sure all the wires are in the same place. And really, everything works great. And the check engine light's not even on. Pretty stoked that it turned out as well as it did.